On Poets. Since I have come to know the body better, Zarathustra said to one of his disciples, the spirit is only a hypothetical spirit to me. And all that is, everlasting, that too is only a parable. Thus I heard you speak once before, answered the disciple, and at that time you added, but the poets lie too much. Why then did you say that the poets lie too much? Why? Said Zarathustra. You ask why? I do not belong to those whose why may be questioned. Is my experience of yesterday? It has been a long time since I experienced the reasons of my opinions. Would I not have to be a keg of memory if I were also to have my reasons with me? It is already too much for me to keep my own opinions, and many a bird flies away. And occasionally I find in my dovecot an animal that has flown to me. A strange one that trembles when I lay my hand upon it. Yet what did Zarathustra once say to you? That the poets lie too much. But Zarathustra too is a poet. Do you believe now that he speaks the truth here? Why do you believe that? The disciple answered, I believe in Zarathustra. But Zarathustra shook his head and smiled. Faith does not make me blessed, he said. Especially not faith in me. But supposing that someone said in all earnestness that the poets lie too much, he is right, we lie too much. We also know too little and are bad learners, thus we simply have to lie. And who of us poets has not watered down his wine? Many a poisonous hodgepodge took place in our cellars. Much that is indescribable was enacted there. And because we know little, we take a hearty liking to the spiritually impoverished, especially when they are little young women. And we are even keen for those things that little old women tell each other evenings. Within ourselves we call that, the eternal feminine. And as if there were a special secret portal to knowledge that becomes blocked to those who learn something, thus we believe in the people and the wisdom. But this is what all poets believe. That whoever pricks up his ears while lying in the grass or on a lonely slope will divine something about the things that are situated between heaven and earth. And if tender stirrings come to them, then the poets always think that nature herself is in love with them, and she creeps up to their ears to tell them secrets and enamored flatteries, the like of which makes them boastful and bloated before all mortals. Indeed, there are so many things between heaven and earth of which only the poets have dreamed. And especially above the heavens. For all gods are poets' parable, poets' cock and bull. Indeed, always it lifts us up, namely to the kingdom of the clouds. Atop these we set our motley bastards and then call them gods and overmen, and they are just light enough for these chairs, all these gods and overmen. Oh, how I am weary of all this imperfection that is supposed to become an event at any cost. When Zarathustra had spoken thus, his disciple was angry with him, but he remained silent. And Zarathustra too remained silent, and his gaze had turned inward, as if he were gazing into vast distances. At last he sighed and took a breath. I am of today and of the past, he said then. But there is something in me that is of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and of days to come. I became weary of the poets, the old and the new. Superficial they all are to me and shallow seas. They did not think sufficiently to the depths, therefore their feeling did not get to the bottom. A bit of lust and a bit of boredom, that so far has been their best contemplation. Ghost whispers and whisking I consider all their harp jingle-jangle. What have they ever known of the ardor of tones? Nor are they clean enough for me. They all muddy their water to make it seem deep. And though they gladly pose as reconcilers, to me they remain middlemen, mixers and halves and unclean. Indeed, I cast my net into their seas and wanted to catch good fish, but always I hauled in an ancient god's head. Thus the sea gave a stone to the hungry. And the poets themselves may well come from the sea. To be sure, one finds pearls in them, and they are all the more similar to hard shellfish. And instead of a soul I often found salty slime in them. They also learned vanity from the sea. Isn't the sea the peacock of peacocks? Even before the ugliest of all buffaloes it fans its tail, it never tires of its silver and silky fans of lace. Defiantly the buffalo looks on. In his soul close to the sand, still closer to the thicket, but closest to the swamp. What does he care of beauty and sea and peacock's finery? This parable I say to the poets. Truly, their spirit itself is this peacock of peacocks and a sea of vanity. The spirit of the poet wants spectators, even if they have to be buffaloes. But I became weary of this spirit. And I foresee that it will become weary of itself. Transformed I have already seen the poets, and turning their gaze against themselves. I saw ascetics of the spirit approaching. They grew out of the poets. Thus spoke Zarathustra.